Good evening, I'm Jim Lara. On the NewsHour tonight, the news of this Thursday, then the latest on the campaigns of Sarah Palin and Joe Biden as a preview to their vice presidential debate tonight in St. Louis. 3 views on how well the Senate-passed rescue plan addresses the financial crisis, an encore of a health unit report on treating a serious sleep disorder, and the analysis of Mark Shields and David Brooks.
Major funding for the NewsHour with Jim Lara is provided by with hard work and careful planning, Pacific Life can help you retire the way you want to, with mutual funds and life insurance, and with annuities that can guarantee an income for the rest of your life. Your financial professional and Pacific Life can help you reach your retirement goals. Pacific Life, the power to help you succeed.
With soaring energy prices and global climate change, there are good reasons for believing in wind. Wind energy is clean and plentiful, and it answers the call for sustainable ways to create the electricity we need. We know because our sole focus is developing technology that uses the energy of the wind to generate electricity. America has some of the world's most abundant wind resources, and Vestas is here to help harness them.
Chevron
and the National Science Foundation, supporting education and research across all fields of science and engineering.
and with the ongoing support of these institutions and foundations. And
this program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
The vice presidential candidates debate tonight at Washington University in St. Louis. It will be the only face-off between Democrat Joe Biden and Republican Sarah Palin. And it comes as polls show rising doubts about Palin's readiness to be vice president. The 90-minute debate will be moderated by the NewsHour's Gwen Eiffel and will air on most PBS stations and all other networks starting at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll have more on this story right after the news summary. The presidential candidates returned to campaigning after late-night votes in the Senate on the financial rescue plan. Republican John McCain headed to Denver. He insisted his campaign is doing fine despite falling in the polls. Democrat Barack Obama stumped in Michigan, the state with the highest unemployment. He charged again McCain is out of touch on the economy. The push to pass an economic rescue plan shifted back to the House today. The $700 billion plan easily passed the Senate last night, 74 to 25. This morning, President Bush met with business owners. He urged the House to act, and he said a lot of people are watching.
This issue has gone way beyond New York and Wall Street. This is an issue that's affecting hard-working people. They're worried about their savings. They're worried about their jobs. They're worried about their houses. They're worried about their small businesses. And the House of Representatives must listen to these voices and get this bill passed so we can get about the business of restoring confidence.
The House vote was set for tomorrow. Leaders on both sides cautiously predicted the bill would pass this time after the Senate added $150 billion in tax breaks. House Speaker Pelosi said Republicans and Democrats are working together to put together a majority.
Members like to see the bill before they give you an answer, and they saw what happened in the Senate last night, but now they're getting a closer look, and as they review it, then we can go forward to see what the vote will be. And we're not going to take a bill to the floor that doesn't have the votes. I'm optimistic that we will take a bill to the floor.
But a number of lawmakers on both sides remained opposed. A group of conservative Republicans complained the Senate added pork barrel projects to the bill to win votes.
One of the things that I think Democrats and Republicans are in agreement about are things arriving at midnight and being dumped into bills. That's what we've got here, and that's what I'm outraged about, and that's why I hope other people who voted yes may be reconsidering where they are.
We'll have more on this story later in the program. Wall Street was rocked again today by bleak economic data. Government reports showed claims for unemployment hit a 7-year high last week, and factory orders plunged in August. The news sent the Dow Jones Industrial Average down 348 points to close below 10,483. The NASDAQ fell more than 92 points to close at 1976. The price of oil also plunged 4% in New York trading to finish just under $94 a barrel. Overseas markets also fared poorly today. Stocks were mostly down in European and Asian trading, despite the vote in the U.S. Senate. Still, the president of the European Commission praised the Senate action.
It is a very good step in the right direction. We need a global effort to inject confidence in the financial market. And the United States, of course, have a major responsibility on this.
The nations with the 4 largest economies in Europe agreed today to hold a summit on Saturday. The office of French President Sarkozy said leaders from Britain, Italy, and Germany will gather in Paris. In Iraq today, suicide bombings in Baghdad killed at least 24 Iraqis and injured 50 more. The 2 attacks struck outside Shiite mosques as worshippers ended the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. Last Sunday, another series of bombings killed 32 people in Shiite parts of the city. A U.S. soldier pleaded guilty today in the killing of 4 Iraqi prisoners last year. The 4 were tied up, blindfolded, and shot. Their bodies were dumped in a Baghdad canal. The soldier admitted he stood guard while 3 other soldiers carried out the killings. He was sentenced to 8 months in prison at a court-martial in Germany. He also agreed to testify against the other suspects. Authorities in California confirmed today they found the wreckage of Steve Fawcett's airplane. The millionaire adventurer disappeared a year ago in a single-engine plane. Search teams found the wreckage last night near Mammoth Lake, California, in the rugged Sierra Nevada mountains. There was no sign of human remains. Based on photos of the site, safety investigators said it was unlikely Fawcett survived. The local sheriff said it appeared the plane flew into a mountainside.
It appeared to me, just looking at the pictures, that there was a head-on crash into the side of a mountain, into a rock. The plane moved up in an upward direction for 100 feet or so and disintegrated. The engine was found about 300 feet farther than the fuselage and the wings.
On Monday, a hiker found ID cards belonging to Fawcett. That was about a quarter mile from where the wreckage was found. Fawcett was declared dead last February. He was 63 years old. The federal corruption trial of Senator Ted Stevens was suspended today as the defense demanded a mistrial. The judge considered whether prosecutors withheld evidence that might help the Alaska Republican. Later, he rejected the motion and allowed the trial to continue. Stevens is accused of concealing more than $250,000 in home renovations and other gifts. And that's it for the news summary tonight. Now, the Biden-Palin debate, the Senate's rescue version, sleep problems, and Shields and Brooks. The 2 vice presidential nominees and their role in the campaign, Judy Woodruff reports.
The past month has been a study in contrast when it comes to the 2 vice presidential nominees. Sarah Palin has campaigned mostly with John McCain, drawn large, enthusiastic crowds, and received considerable attention from the national news media. However, she has done just 3 extended television interviews. Most recently, she sat down with CBS Evening News anchor Katie Couric and appeared to struggle with some questions, including one about McCain's record on regulating financial markets.
You've said, quote, John McCain will reform the way Wall Street does business. Other than supporting stricter regulations of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac 2 years ago, can you give us any more examples of his leading the charge for more oversight?
I think that the example that you just cited with his warnings 2 years ago about Fannie and Freddie, that's paramount. That's more than a heck of a lot of other senators and representatives did for us.
I'm just going to ask you one more time, not to belabor the point, specific examples in his 26 years of pushing for more regulations.
I'll try to find you some and I'll bring them to you.
Such responses have drawn criticism from political writers and commentators on both the left and the right. And a new poll by ABC News and the Washington Post shows 6 in 10 voters believe Palin lacks the experience to be an effective president. The few times Biden has been thrust into the spotlight have been for misstatements or gaffes, like this one during his own interview with Couric in September.
Part of what a leader does is to instill confidence, is demonstrate that he or she knows what they're talking about and communicates to people. If you listen to me and follow what I'm suggesting, we can fix this. When the stock market crashed, Franklin Roosevelt got on television and didn't just talk about the princes of greed.
Roosevelt was not president when the market collapsed, and television was still years away from becoming a mainstream medium. For the past week, both Palin and Biden have been preparing for tonight's debate. Palin at McCain's home in Arizona, Biden near his home in Delaware. But in the past day or so, some attention has shifted to the moderator, NewsHour senior correspondent Gwen Ifill. Wednesday morning, blogger Matt Drudge linked to an article on WorldNet Daily, a conservative news and opinion website, which called into question Ifill's objectivity as moderator, citing the release of her upcoming book on a new generation of African-American political leaders. The title of the yet-to-be-completed work is The Breakthrough, Politics and Race in the Age of Obama. It includes profiles of Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick, Newark Mayor Cory Booker, and Alabama Congressman Arthur Davis. Some commentators have suggested it's a conflict of interest, since Ifill stands to gain from book sales. Yesterday, syndicated columnist Michelle Malkin wrote about Ifill, quote, "She's so far in the tank for the Democrat presidential candidate, her oxygen delivery line is running out." Ifill's response, quote, "I've got a pretty long track record covering politics and news, so I'm not particularly worried that one day blog chatter is going to destroy my reputation. The proof is in the pudding. They can watch the debate and make their own decisions about whether or not I've done my job." A number of journalists came to Ifill's defense today, and so did former McCain aide John Weaver, who was quoted by the New York Times. Gwen Ifill is as honorable and fair a journalist as there is, and all of us in our business know that. McCain himself addressed the issue in an appearance on Fox News this morning, saying, quote, "Frankly, I wish that they had picked a moderator that isn't writing a book favorable to Barack Obama. But I have to have confidence that Gwen Ifill will treat this as a professional journalist as she is." In the end, tonight's debate will not be about the moderator, but about the two vice presidential candidates facing each other for the only time in this election. For a closer look at the roles that Sarah Palin and Joe Biden have been playing in the presidential campaign, we turn to Washington Post reporter Perry Bacon. He's been covering Biden on the campaign trail. And New York Times reporter Kate Zernike. She's been on the trail with Palin. So let's talk about these nominees, and Joe Biden first. Perry Bacon, to you. How has he been used on the trail?
He's been targeting a lot of states. He's been a lot of times in Ohio and Pennsylvania and Michigan. These are three big swing states. And he's to some extent become the sort of ambassador to what you might call Hillary Clinton land in some ways. The people who sort of didn't vote for Obama in the primary, people in sort of rural towns and smaller towns, and sort of working class voters without college educations often. Biden spent a lot of time in those groups and talked about his sort of middle class background, talked about the fact that he's Catholic, and try to sort of really connect with those audiences and try to sell Obama and validate him to those audiences, as well as sort of criticize Senator McCain's economic plans for not doing enough for those audiences.
What states, what communities, and how are these crowds receiving him?
It depends on where you are, but I think in Pennsylvania he seems to be much more well-known. Delaware is much closer, of course, to Delaware he's from, is much closer to Pennsylvania. So he seems that people in Pennsylvania seem to know who he is and really applaud him a lot. When I travel with him in Ohio and Michigan, there's a little less when you talk to people, there are people at the crowds that are already sort of Obama supporters a lot of times anyway, but people are less familiar with Biden. They still respond to him well, though, because he has a very fiery message and a strong tone in which he sort of praises Obama and takes on McCain.
So mostly a witness for Senator Obama.
Or he described himself, when I talked to him, as a sort of a validator. He said, you know, he and to some extent Bill and Hillary Clinton, as they campaign, are sort of validators for Obama. You know, maybe someone who seems more like you is a validator for Obama, I guess is the way he sort of phrased it.
Kate Zernike, let's talk about Sarah Palin. You've been on the road with her. Where has she been? And we notice she's mostly been with John McCain. Is that right?
She has been, unlike, as Perry was saying, where the Obama and Biden are targeting more of the country and sort of splitting the work. McCain and Palin have been together largely because she just draws these enormous crowds, and that's really boosted his numbers at these big rallies. So in places like Ohio, where they're really fighting hard to win, she's pulled these huge crowds.
And what role does she play in these events? I mean, what generally is her message alongside his?
She really just backs up what he says, but she manages to play a really effective attack dog, which is, of course, the traditional vice presidential role. But she manages to say it with a smile. She injects a little humor into it. She really raises sort of the energy and the exuberance of the crowd. I mean, I was at a rally with them in Ohio, I guess it was last week, or 2 weeks ago, and people started, it almost hurt McCain because people started to stream out of the audience when she was done speaking. And a lot of them said, well, we really came to see Sarah. They just had this tremendous personal connection with her.
Why do you think, Kate Zernike, they decided to restrict the press access to her?
Well, I mean, I think probably the evidence is in the interviews that we have seen. She's really stumbled for answers. She's not been able to provide, for instance, with Katie Couric, I believe it was last night, she couldn't provide an answer to Supreme Court decisions that she disagreed with. I think they're very nervous that she doesn't have a lot of experience on the national stage, and they don't know what she's going to say. And it's not just the press, really. She's not done a lot of fundraisers so far. She did one in Ohio early on and did not take questions from the audience. So they've really tried to just keep her to scripted events where they know they can have a better handle on what she's saying.
And Perry Bacon, back to you. What about Biden? How often does he talk to the press?
Biden does a lot of interviews. I think his staff, when they've criticized Palin, they've talked about, I think he's done something in the order of 90 interviews. He also doesn't want to do a lot of press conferences with the reporters who follow him around. It tends to be more sort of like interviews on like a network show or on sort of a local television station where he's campaigning. He's done, I think, something like 90 interviews overall, so he's actually talked a lot.
How much is he talking about Governor Palin?
Almost never. I mean, he's sort of avoided talking. He's very early on, he made a joke about how she was good-looking in his words, and that appeared in a McCain ad that sort of suggested the Democrats were being demeaning to her. And pretty much after that, he's said almost nothing about. It's part of the Obama strategy. It's been Obama and Biden decided they're going to talk about Palin very little and make sure to focus on McCain as much as possible. So you hear very, very little from Biden about Palin.
And Kate Zernike, what about Governor Palin? How much is she bringing up Joe Biden? We know that there was a comment the other day where she said she'd been watching him on television since she was in second grade.
Right. But that's really the only reference she's made to him, and that was sort of to set the expectations high. They've been trying to set the expectations low for her for tonight so that anything she does is going to appear like a great performance. They've tried to say that Joe Biden has all this experience debating, so of course he should win, and she's really in an uphill fight here. She talks about Obama a bit, but more, our opponent, never by name, and really very little about Biden.
What has she been doing to prepare? How much is known about that?
Well, they were out, as you said earlier, they were in Sedona for a large part of this week. The campaign released very little information about it. They wouldn't even say who was playing Biden in the debate prep and the mock debates. They did release a photo of her and a statement saying that they've been doing debate prep in a relaxed setting by the river. It was sort of, you can imagine debate spa instead of debate boot camp. So they really didn't say very much about what she was doing, but I'm sure it involved boning up on both foreign policy and the economy, which is where she's really struggled in these interviews.
And that's been over the last several days.
Yeah.
Perry Bacon, what about Biden? He's been back in Delaware. What has he been doing to prepare?
His staff has been sure to sort of look over the tapes. They don't know much about Palin. They didn't before. So they've looked over the tapes of her gubernatorial debates in 2006 and sort of talked to them about that. Jennifer Granholm, the governor of Michigan, who is also the youngest, female governor, sort of came came to Delaware to work with Biden because the staff doesn't want to overstate that, but they are sort of aware of the gender factor involved here, and sort of they made sure Biden has talked to some other female senators, including Hillary Clinton, about the debate as well. So they're aware of that factor, but he knows his policy views pretty well, I think. So they may have been going over sort of reviewing those and also thinking about tactics and trying to make sure that he focuses more on McCain and Obama than Palin.
And Perry, what are they saying about their expectations in terms of what are they worried about, what are they confident about?
Well, they're trying to play the same game, which is to suggest that Palin is the world's greatest debater. So they're talking about how, the thing they seem to be aware of is that she's good at sort of, Biden said this himself at one point, said Palin's RNC speech at the convention a few months ago showed she was really good at sort of being punchy and having some tough one-liners. So they are trying to make sure Biden is prepared for how to deal with it if she comes directly at him, because Biden sort of admitted himself he's sort of known for being long-winded, and he sort of acknowledges if the debate is about who has the best one-liner, he said, I'm not going to do very well. So that's something they're sort of aware of.
And Kate Zernike, what are the McCain people saying about their expectations for Governor Palin and what they're worried about, what they're confident about?
Well, I think what they're trying to do is set this up as Sarah Palin, who has executive experience and is Joe Sixpack, as she's been describing herself lately. And Joe Biden spent 30 years in the halls of the Senate. Sort of, he's all twisted up in this arcane policy detail, but she's really one of the people, and she's going to appeal to people on that level, and people will see her and make the kind of connection that they've been making at these big rallies.
All right, well, we are going to leave it there. Kate Zernike with the New York Times, Perry Bacon with the Washington Post. Thank you both.
Thank you, Judith.
Next tonight, does the financial rescue plan fix what needs to be fixed? Ray Suarez gets an assessment.
If lawmakers approve the bill tomorrow, the package would be the largest government intervention in history. The government would be allowed to buy up to $700 billion of bad debt in phases. Congress could deny Treasury's request for half the money. It could raise the amount of bank deposits insured by the FDIC from $100,000 a person to $250,000. And the government could allow the FDIC to temporarily borrow money as much as needed from the Treasury. And it could encourage the Treasury Secretary to restructure any mortgages bought by government that may be in danger of foreclosure. To what extent does this plan help solve the problem? We get three perspectives. They come from Scheherazade Rehman, who's written about financial crises and advised a number of institutions, including the World Bank and central banks. She's a professor of international finance and business at the George Washington University. John Cochran is a professor of finance at the University of Chicago. He helped organize a letter signed by 200 economists questioning the design of the Paulson Plan. And Ken Rogoff is a former chief economist for the IMF. He's now a professor of public policy and economics at Harvard University. And Professor Cochran, in your view, does the modified bill, the one that's going to head up for a vote tomorrow, address some of the underlying problems in the securities and credit markets?
No, I think the modified bill is in fact worse than the original bill. Many of the modifications are either counterproductive, hugely expensive, or a piñata full of ridiculousness.
And explain that. A piñata full of ridiculousness? Are you referring to the things that were added in order to get those extra votes?
Yes. For example, deep in there, there's a subsidy for bicycle commuting. But more importantly, the parts that are going to be counterproductive are very expensive.
Professor Rehman, do you think this gets at the fundamental problems that this bill was meant to solve?
Well, I think piñata or no piñata, we are in a full-blown financial crisis. There's a panic out there. There is a crisis of confidence. We are hemorrhaging, not only in terms of confidence, but capital. And we have now, a couple of nights ago, hit the belly of economic America, which is middle-class wealth. Whether it addresses all the technical details, no. But it does stop the hemorrhaging, and that is a critical aspect right now, to stop the panic.
Professor Rogoff, where do you come down?
Well, it's a very imperfect bill, but I totally agree. There's a wholesale panic going out there. It's a good old-fashioned bank run on money funds, on commercial paper, on everything. And I think if Congress says to the credit markets, drop dead, it's just going to be chaos out there. So as much as I don't like this, I think the bill's better than the one that we had on Friday. I think it sort of pulls back a lot of some of the giveaway to the financial sector. And, okay, I wouldn't have written it, but we've got to do it.
Imperfect, you say. But what about the biggest part of it, the one that gets the most attention, and that is the up to $700 billion of money made available to the Treasury Secretary to stabilize the markets by buying up troubled debt?
Well, first I say the part I think is the best is the part they've added of raising the deposit insurance, because there's a bank run going on that's driving a lot of the problems in credit markets. But I certainly agree with John that it's a very complicated financial engineering. They have to have lots of legions of investment bankers figure out what these securities are worth. The same investment bankers who were, when they were in the private sector, couldn't figure out what the securities are worth. It's a mess, but I think we have to move forward. There is some take back so that the final cost is not as great as it would have been.
Professor Cochran, you hear your two colleagues talking about having to do something to avoid a full-blown panic. What would you suggest instead?
Well, there's lots of things we can do instead, but neither of them said how this is going to work. Every story I've heard involves at some point magic steps in. The argument so far was, well, we have to do something to restore confidence. That's just magic. If this bill is going to pass, let's hear how, in fact, it is going to restore that confidence. There's plenty we can do instead. Basically, banks need more capital, and before that can happen, the old capital, stockholders and some long-term debt, are going to have to lose a lot of money, and they're crying that they don't want to do that.
Restoration of confidence is magic?
And no, but it is absolutely critical. A car accident victim when bleeding, you have to stop the hemorrhaging first, and then debate about how to stitch him up, what bandage to use, which hospital to take him, and which specialized doctor to use. And I think that there is going to be some very technical, detailed discussions following this. But if the panic is not stopped, middle America gets hit again on Friday if there is a no vote.
Well, reassurance is hard to quantify on a balance sheet. What does confidence do that stops that hemorrhaging, that stops that panic?
I think, as the previous speaker said, the $250,000 limit now in FDIC has eased fears of banks and their customers that perhaps we are covered a little bit more. And so that builds up confidence. The amount could be $600 billion or $900 billion. It doesn't matter. It's restoring the confidence that somebody's in there, the federal government, to bail these companies out, rightly or wrongly.
Professor Cochran, what about the raise in the FDIC covered amount in accounts? Do you favor that?
I'm all for it. Yes, I'm all for that. And your viewers need to understand there is no need for anyone to run to the bank and empty their insured bank accounts. Ordinary depositors are not at risk here, and that's a very good part of this bill. The one good part.
As this, well, a tepid praise there, Ken Rogoff?
Well, I mean, I certainly don't think this is the end. This is a step. It is not going to work. It is not going to be enough. Eventually, we have to do something like Professor Cochran suggests of injecting capital into the banks in return for senior equity, putting the taxpayer first. We've got to close a lot of the banking system. The banking system's still bloated. They have to get auditors in there to choose which banks close. It's going to take much firmer intervention. There are other plans. There are some involving helping the homeowners directly. This is not the last word. The final cost is actually going to be much greater than what's projected from this bill. But we're in paralysis here. The spreads are exploding. Companies are having trouble meeting their payrolls if we don't get the credit markets moving. You can't just, talk about theoretically what's the best thing to do. You have to stop the bleeding.
The CBO, incidentally, the Congressional Budget Office, has scored this as saying it may cost significantly less than the $700 billion. You're saying it's going to cost more.
Oh, no. I think this will cost a lot less than $700 billion, but it won't do the job. This is going to cost maybe a couple $100 billion. We might even make a couple $100 billion. But the trouble is, it's a complicated piece of financial engineering, but it just doesn't do enough. The banks don't have enough capital. We have to close the banks that are insolvent. We have to inject capital into the banks that are going to be strong in return for getting stock, equity, something for the taxpayer to get some of their money back. But there's an important point. You've got to close the insolvent banks. You can't just rain money on everyone. That was really the problem with the first bill. And there's problems in this bill that it could be some of the weaker banks take the money. But this is a step. This is a process. Every big financial bailout works this way. It's very hard to hit it, in one shot. We've got to show we're moving. It's very painful. But the credit market situation is simply once in a century right now.
Professor Cochran, before we move on to what happens down the road, I want to get one more shot at what it is that won't work, in your view, about this. We know that you think it's a bad idea. We know that you're very critical of the solution. But why wouldn't the injection of this kind of capital into the system through shoring up some of this debt work?
Well, the plan is to try to raise the value of all mortgages in the country so that the assets on banks' books are larger than they are right now. There's some magic about liquidity, but fundamentally you have to buy a lot of mortgages to do that. And the Senate added that at the same time, we're not going to make people pay back their mortgages. That may be the right thing to do, but that's going to add tremendously to the cost. Along with, the Senate said, the purchasers now have to guarantee the level of retirement savings in 403B plans. Cost is going to really explode here.
Skepticism that raising the value of everyone's mortgage is something that the government can really do.
I don't know. I think that hopefully if they can do it, that would be great. But I think the $700 billion cost, no one can predict if it's going to be a little bit less, a little bit more. It has to get done. And the devil is in the details here. But I think the Treasury Secretary has enough confidence in professionals around him that these will be managed. Clearly not by the Treasury itself, but there will be professional help in managing these assets and then deciding what to do with them down the road. And this is a long process.
Professor Raymond talked about stabilizing the patient, in effect, and then perhaps making some fixes down the road. What would you like to see done after this first wave of measures is taken to either refine or repair this bill?
Well, we come back to the point that a lot of banks have to get closed in order to really let the government move in some way to help the other banks. We have to allow banks to fail. We need some tough love in the banking system to get through this. And there's no real way around that. There are various ways. Injecting capital is the cheapest. We could go at the outside and help the homeowners directly. That would be a lot more expensive. There just isn't a pretty way to do this, but understand, this is simply an epic crisis and the damage this will cause. We're in a recession. There's really no bottom to this unless we stop this. You can't just say, well, the market will sort it out. The government's deeply intervened in this market already, and you can't just back off and say it'll work out. We've done a good job of having a lot of banks closed. Washington Mutual's gone. Wachovia's gone. There are no more investment banks. A lot of actions happen. This has not been a case of soft pedaling like Japan where we hold up the whole system. We've been tough, but, we have to step in at this point and really stop this full-blown financial panic. It's not just the insured accounts. It's money funds. It's commercial paper. It's big institutions. They're all pouring their money into treasuries and clearing out of everything. And somebody has to put a stop.
Professor Cochran, is this something that can be repaired down the road? Can your objections to it be addressed down the road?
Well, this plan, I think, will end up just doing nothing and wasting a lot of money. And then down the road, we'll be doing exactly the kind of things that Ken was talking about, namely letting banks close. And I would remind you, the important thing is not to keep individual banks alive. The one thing that counts is that the banking system can continue to make loans. So if one bank goes under, so long as there's another bank around that can make loans, we'll be okay.
And you suggested at the outset that this is just a holding measure. What's the top thing that you'd like to see fixed in this after it gets the stability that you're looking for first?
I think they're sussing out the assets, which assets to actually acquire, because, banks can slide in some pretty nasty assets that you can do nothing with. And so I think that would be a very critical step. Which assets to buy, how long to hold them, and that does require some professional help in terms of intervening and managing these assets. I think that if we do nothing, then we have a much more serious problem down the road because of Middle America.
Professors Cochran, Raymond, and Rogoff, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now an encore look at a story about treating a sleep problem. Betty Ann Bowser reports for our health unit, a partnership with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation.
Nate McGopigal is desperate for a good night's sleep, so the 31-year-old scientist has come to the sleep disorders clinic at Johns Hopkins University Hospital in Baltimore. There, he was recently diagnosed with obstructive sleep apnea. As shown on the left in this diagram, McGopigal literally stops breathing as he sleeps through the night because his airway collapses, cutting off oxygen to his brain.
I've been diagnosed with depression last year. I'm currently on medication for that. I've also been diagnosed with high blood pressure. I'd be driving in the morning, just like after breakfast, and I'd fall asleep at the wheel, and that's not good.
Sleep apnea is one of the most massively underdiagnosed conditions in the U.S. today. The National Institutes of Health estimate 12 to 18 million Americans have it, and think that 1/3 of the entire population could be suffering from the condition or some other kind of sleep disorder. And recent studies show people with untreated sleep apnea may be flirting with death. Michael Twerry heads the National Center on Sleep Disorders Research in Bethesda, Maryland.
Having untreated sleep disorder breathing is associated with a twofold increased risk of stroke, an increased risk of heart failure, a doubling of the risk of diabetes in certain categories of patients.
A new study published in the August issue of the journal Sleep, one of the most comprehensive ever undertaken, found patients with obstructive sleep apnea were 3 times more likely to die from any cause than those with normal breathing. The study was done at the University of Wisconsin on 1,522 men and women over an 18-year period. To accurately diagnose obstructive sleep apnea, patients like McGopigal have to undergo a sleep study called nocturnal polysomnography. McGopigal was hooked up to a series of sensors that monitored his heart, lungs, brain activity, breathing patterns, arm and leg movements, and blood oxygen levels.
We can move to the bed now.
And like 70% of patients who come to Dr. Nancy Collip at Johns Hopkins, McGopigal came for treatment because his wife couldn't take his snoring anymore.
I think the main reason that many people go undiagnosed is because the person that has sleep apnea really has no awareness of the sleep disorder itself. All they know is that their sleep is not restorative, so they wake up in the morning tired. And unless they have a bed partner or someone that observes them sleeping, they may never know they have the disorder.
So it looks like...
That's why specialists like Dr. Collip say 90% of people with obstructive sleep apnea go undiagnosed. And what makes that most disturbing is the growing evidence linking the condition to mortality.
Apnea means no air, and obstructive means that the airway is actually being obstructed. And eventually the brain gets a signal like, hey, we're not getting enough air, and it makes the person wake up.
But the patient isn't aware he's awake.
So people can wake up and go back to sleep over and over again all night.
Hundreds of times.
Hundreds of times?
Hundreds of times. We have people that have, 500 episodes in a night.
And are they aware that they have 500 episodes a night?
They just know that they don't sleep well.
A patient with obstructive sleep apnea is never able to get to the deep stages of slumber, such as rapid eye movement or REM sleep, which the body needs to replenish itself. 63-year-old telecommunications manager Dick Powell was diagnosed with obstructive sleep apnea 3 years ago.
I would sleep but wake exhausted. That was bad enough. But then I discovered that I really wasn't sleeping at night. I'd wake up, my ribs would be sore because my wife had been punching me to wake me up because I would be gasping for breath. One night, I woke up because I just punched my wife. And that really tipped the scales because...
You mean you literally punched her in the face?
Just like that. Yeah, I'm glad she didn't kill me. But that made it clear to both of us that there was something going on.
Studies now show people in middle age are more likely to develop sleep apnea. Another primary risk factor is excessive weight gain. The accumulation of fat on the sides of the upper airway causes it to become narrow and predisposed to closure. But many patients with sleep apnea are not overweight.
Okay, here.
Journalist Ramsey Flynn is a fit 51-year-old man, but he's been diagnosed with obstructive sleep apnea. And recently he came back to the sleep clinic at Johns Hopkins to be fitted with a continuous positive airway pressure machine known as a CPAP. And he didn't like it one bit.
There's no reading in bed.
Look down.
CPAP machines are considered the gold standard for treating obstructive sleep apnea, but only about 25% of patients are able to get used to them. And even though monitoring showed Flynn did sleep well, about 6 hours with the mask, in the morning, he was convinced it hadn't been effective.
I did not perceive that I was sleeping better. I did not experience the sensation that this is going to help yet. So, to me, it's still jury out.
You think it's because you're still feeling apprehension about the mask? Or?
I certainly didn't like the mask. You know, it's a tough thing to get used to. I just don't like the idea of taking a fancy apparatus and hooking it up every night and having another thing that I need to use to maintain health. That's what I don't like about the idea of the mask.
Across the hall, Nate McGopical was also trying his first night on the CPAP machine. He was extremely eager to have it work.
He seems to be having difficulty.
Yet in spite of McGopical's positive attitude, he had trouble.
In the beginning, it was a little tough. The air was pushing against my expiration, so it was like breathing underwater. But I got used to it after a while.
Good morning. And McGopical is determined. It's been years since his wife has been able to sleep through the entire night with him because of his snoring.
There was a reward this morning that, I was able to get some sleep and dream.
How do you feel right now?
Awake.
How do you normally feel when you get up?
Groggy. So there's a marked difference.
Dick Powell thinks most people can get used to the CPAP machine in time. He's been using his for 3 years.
My blood pressure has dropped like a stone. My doctor is thinking maybe I don't even need the medication anymore, which is really good because it means my heart is healthier. I'm totally rested. I wake refreshed, energized. I can face anything the day can throw at me. It's just an absolutely miraculous change.
Researchers are hoping, as studies continue, to link obstructive sleep apnea to illness and mortality, more people will realize that when someone sounds like this, it's not just annoying, it may be a cry for help.
And finally tonight, some special analysis by Shields and Brooks, syndicated columnist Mark Shields, New York Times columnist David Brooks. First, the Senate vote, Mark, on the financial plan. What happened? Where did those 74 votes suddenly come from?
Well, Jim, I was up there covering it, and I have to say, I don't know the merits of this. I know two things. It was a tough vote to cast this close to an election. We saw that in the House earlier in the week, where a lot of people did a Dixie. They went south. You're asking people to inconvenience themselves, put themselves at risk. It was enormously unpopular. There's a great populist radio organized uprising against it. And I just, as a citizen, taking off my journalist hat, I felt good watching people, quite honestly, like John Sununu in New Hampshire, was in a tough race for re-election, probably trailing at this point. Gene Shaheen, the former Democratic governor, and he voted for it. I mean, it would have been easy for him to do it. But I think there was an acknowledgement. Our inspector said to me, he said,
Senator from Pennsylvania,
Republican, who said to me, he said, look, we were goaded by the House action and 778 points on the Dow Jones. I mean, that did it.
Do you think that was it?
Well, they also added some sweeteners, $150 billion. It used to be $150 billion was like a whole bill. Now it's just a little sweetener off on the side. But I agree with Mark. The Senate, the culture of the Senate is different than the culture of the House. There's less of the populists, either on the left or the right, in the Senate. And listen, you're a senator or even a House member. You know a little about Wall Street. But you don't know a lot. You don't really understand. But you look at the array of expertise that says the same thing. This is not a great bill, but we have to do it. What the two economists here said just now on the program. And you say, okay, I trust them. We've got to do it. To me, the amazing thing is you have so many House members who say, I may not understand this, and all of expert opinion may be on one side and saying we got to do it, but I still say no. I mean, that's sort of arrogant. And senators have a tendency to be arrogant, but not that arrogant.
So what's going to happen with the House now?
Well, I don't think twice in the same week the House leadership is going to bring up the bill if they don't have a vote.
Nancy Pelosi said, well, no way we're going to bring it up.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I think that was stunning for all involved. I think they will pass it on Friday, and I think that that'll do the Congress's work for the year, and they'll go home and campaign where they've always wanted to be.
How is this whole financial rescue thing affecting the presidential campaign now, David?
Well, I think it's actually been surprisingly ineffective in affecting them personally, because both of them have been basically saying the same thing. And both of them have been pretty responsible. There would have been great temptation, especially for John McCain, to come out against this. It was the temporarily popular thing to do, but he resisted the demagogic urge. I think so, in terms of their policy, it's had a limited effect. But what it has done is it's shifted the focus of attention. Shifted the focus of the attention to two things. First, the economy, and second, to the idea that Washington is really screwed up. And so those two things, even though Barack Obama has not been far up front on this, he has benefited from that shift of attention. And all you have to do is look at the polls in the last week, and there has been a strong current for Obama. I expected there to be a switch to Obama at some point in this month, but that it's happening so early, and he's now maybe got a 6-point lead if you take all the polls. I'm surprised it's happening this early, and it has to be because of this crisis.
I think, Jim, that it's hurt John McCain in this sense. The doubts about Barack Obama that people have asked all throughout this campaign is, am I safe with him? My children, my family safe with him? As a commander-in-chief, are his values my values, where he comes from? I mean, he's not from Abilene, Kansas, or Hope, Arkansas, Hyannisport. I mean, you know, he's Hawaii and Indonesia. And I think what John McCain did last week with his mercurial, if not erratic behavior, in changing positions and intervening, not intervening, saying he wouldn't do anything until he was going to deliver votes, and the entire Arizona Republican delegation, all of whom are supporting John McCain, every one of them voted against it. I think what he did was he introduced flappability into his public personality, and Barack Obama, by simply being sort of cool and diffident and unflappable, benefited from it. And so all of a sudden, John McCain looked a little bit more risky last week than he had before. And I think in that sense it's hurt him.
I'd say he also looked a little more solitary. McCain was alone, going to Washington, going here, going there. Obama, the smart thing he did right away, he had a press conference surrounded by economic expertise. He had Bob Rubin there, he had Larry Summers there, he had Gene Sperling, Paul Volcker, he's spoken to Warren Buffett, Laura Tyson. People, basically, if you pay attention to this, you trust those people, even if you're not sure who this Obama guy is. So he had a team, and for all the cult-like status around Obama, this week, and I think in the last couple of weeks, he seemed more like a guy representing a group and a movement who you basically have some confidence in. It's not quite clear. McCain has some good domestic policy advisors, Douglas Holt-Easton, but he hasn't projected that same sort of, I've got a group of people, we're going to handle this.
All right, tonight, the vice presidential debate. What's at stake, Mark?
Well, what's at stake for each of the individuals, unless the possibility that one of them becomes president, one of the three vice presidents has become president in our history, is that this is going to be the impression they leave with the American people. It's going to be this debate tonight. And if John McCain does lose, I'm not by any chance ready to write him off at this point. Sarah Palin's hopes, expectations, which were pretty strong maybe 4 weeks ago of being the leader of the conservative movement, are very much at risk. I think, going into tonight. What's happened, Jim, is that Sarah Palin has had a bad 4 weeks. And it's people like her. They think she's natural and authentic and real. They find her appealing. But the problem is that of qualification. And we've gone from a majority in Andy Kohut's Pew poll of thinking she was qualified Now we're down to a majority, a solid majority, who don't think she's qualified. So I think she's got a lot at stake tonight. Joe Biden, by contrast, no smiles, no smirk, no diminutives. Joe's got to make up his mind that what he wants voters to come out of this debate with tonight is Joe Biden's a good guy and Barack Obama would be a good president, not Joe Biden's the smartest guy in the room. I mean, and that's, I think, the temptation.
It's Sarah Palin's night. There's Sarah Palin speaking, and then you can go to the fridge and get a beer. If she does well, it'll be fine for the McCain campaign, but there's probably relatively little upside. There is a downside. If she speaks tonight the way she spoke to Katie Couric, there'll just be a collapse for McCain. It'll be just terrible news. So she's got to show, A, she can speak in paragraphs, B, she can speak with some authority, and C, she can be herself. They're trying to turn her into the wonk of the century, and she's never going to be that. But if she can speak as herself, just as a person, she'll have some authority because it'll be genuine. But she has been over-prepped and over-prepared in the last couple of weeks, and she's hopefully, for her sake, going to break out of that and just be herself. But there's real danger here, I think, and Republicans are going to look at this campaign, at this debate, hands over their eyes, nervous.
Mm-hmm. You think the whole shooting match is at stake, not just Sarah Palin's future, or whether she has a the leader of the Republican right.
Most vice presidential debates, you get two professional politicians. They know how to dodge questions. They know how to answer questions. With Sarah Palin, you're not quite sure what you get. She's got two kinds of inexperience. One, I sort of find endearing. She doesn't know how to dodge a question. She's not a very good bluffer. You could ask most politicians about quantum mechanics, and they'll fill you with a paragraph, even though they don't know what they're talking about. But she's got the bad kind of inexperience, which is there are some policy areas of expertise she doesn't seem to know, and that's when you get into the dark hole. And so, you know, will we fall into that hole tonight? That's the question.
Yeah. The issue of
rugs, the West Coast leader in rugs. Why would a liberal Democrat like me vote for Gordon Smith? Because I've seen Gordon stand by his principles many times against his own party, supporting funding for women's health clinics and gay rights, opposing oil drilling in Alaska, and so important to me, he was one of the first Republicans to break with George Bush and his party to end this awful war. His integrity and honesty are good for Oregon.
I'm Gordon Smith, and I approve this ad.
Where do you go for beautiful, affordable fall fashion? The JCPenney Grand Opening Sale. Shop early with Doorbusters Saturday, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Save 50% on all Worthington separates. Save on all Stafford and J. Farrar dress shirts. Gold jewelry is 65% off. Save 60% on the latest Mrs. outerwear. Get bath towels, 2 for $7. And women's boots are 50% off. The JCPenney Grand Opening Sale this Friday and Saturday. Go to jcp.com to see everything on sale.
You know, it's getting hard to believe in anything anymore. Religion, for example, can seem so arbitrary at times, even mythological. Science, on the other hand, is pure empiricism, and by virtue of its method, it defies metaphysics. I don't think I'd believe in anything at all if it weren't for Steve Dunn and the circular file.
Fabulous. Oh, boy. Where's Rod tonight? He memorized that. In tonight's circular file. Remember that story we told you about last night about a man who used his cigarette lighter to shine some light while he was siphoning some gasoline? That didn't go too well for him. Well, tonight we go to Rhode Island. That's where police were cruising down the street and found a car smoking in the street. Turns out a guy had a bunch of fireworks in his car and lit a cigarette. The witnesses told police they saw somebody tossing fireworks out shortly before police arrived. The driver's charged with possessing illegal fireworks. I went to college in that great state. Maybe the guy from last time, the guy from tonight should get together.
They probably do know each other.
We do know each other.
They're the same person, actually.
See you tomorrow, folks.
Fisher Communications.
What's happening with Wall Street is really scaring me. I'm extremely worried about it.
It really scares the daylights out of me.
Gordon Smith wanted to privatize Social Security.
Gordon Smith wanted to privatize my Social Security.
Boy, ambassador, if he'd gotten his way.
I would be on very, very insecure grounds as far as my retirement's concerned.
If Gordon Smith and George Bush had gotten their own way, we'd be in hot water.
The Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Oregon
Oregon's original multi-dealer RV show is coming to the Salem Fairgrounds next weekend. Unbelievable savings from 12 regional dealers. Al's Trailer, Curtis Trailer, Fred's RV World, Guarantee RV, Guarantee Trailer and Van, Hallmark, Highway Trailer, Johnson RV, Northwest RV, Olinger, Paradise RV, Wager Trailer Sales. Plus daily product demonstrations and on-site family destination resorts. Visit westlakepromo.com for complete details on this unique multi-dealer event.
When is a bookstore more than a bookstore? At the Portland State Bookstore, you'll discover 3 floors of apparel, office supplies, art materials, and so much more. The Portland State Bookstore truly has something for everyone. And if you're looking for books, the Portland State Bookstore has one of the area's best selections. Need something high-tech? They've got you covered there, too. Conveniently located on Southwest 5th Avenue next to TSU or on the web at psubookstore.com. Think, learn, create, be. The Portland State Bookstore, the bookstore with more.
This Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, thousands of people will be here at George Moreland Plumbing in Tigard. Why? It's our annual fall inventory clearance sale with hundreds of plumbing items on sale, including sinks, faucets, Whirlpool bathtubs, and more, all at rock-bottom clearance prices. If you're building or remodeling, don't miss it. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday only here at George Moreland Plumbing in Tigard.
George Moreland Plumbing, the water heater king.
Millions of Americans used to think they couldn't afford their prescriptions month in and month out, that they'd have to cut back or go without their medications altogether. Then they asked us for a second opinion. The Walmart prescription drug program has saved Americans $1 billion in just over a year. It's another way we're working to make quality health care affordable and accessible for everyone. Save money. Live better. Walmart.
The U.S. Chamber of Commerce is responsible for the content of this advertising. Healthcare is vital. That's why Gordon Smith voted to ensure Oregon seniors have better access to health care and affordable prescriptions. Smith supported funding for health technology and cutting-edge scientific research so Oregon families can live longer, healthier lives. And Smith supports doctors and patients making healthcare decisions, not government bureaucrats. Call Gordon Smith. Tell them to keep working for better health care.
Tonight's K2 program brought to you by Sofas by Design.